wonderfully branded Hustings event, the elections debate, who should run your bar? Do you get it? It took me ages to make the imagery for it. We have, I'll just let everyone know basically what the format is. So we have 3 categories tonight for which the candidates will be answering questions to. And those are education, social sciences, and equality and liberation. And these have all been submitted by students, with the exception of one question, to us so that they could be asked of the candidates today. And so there's a couple of questions within each category. And the way this is going to work is we have this wonderful device here called a catch box, which is basically a throwable mic. So I'm going to demonstrate this now with the wonderful Students' Union staff member, Danny Bazard.
Do I have to stand up?
Are you ready?
I'm ready, I think.
No pressure, you have to catch it.
Hey.
Round of applause for Danny.
It's on.
Nice. Can you guys hear that out there?
Cool.
Yes.
Okay, great. So the people who are asking the questions today know they're asking the questions. So when I refer to you to ask the question, if you just make yourself known to whoever's had the catch box previously, and hopefully it will find its way to you. And then at the end, when we have a free-for-all for questions from the floor, hopefully we can sort of, get the mic moving around the room and solve that problem of the awkward delivery of mics like this. So with these questions, we're going to give each candidate 1 minute to answer them. They've seen these questions prior to coming here. And then there will be a right to reply for a few minutes, which can either be for the audience or one of these candidates. And I'd ask that if you would like to reply to the question or any of the comments the candidates have made in response to it, that your comment be directly related to that question. Okay, how am I doing? Right, so before we get going, we're just going to do a little exercise here. Could I ask everyone who thinks they've made their decision of who they're going to vote for to stand? And if you cannot stand, raise your hand.
You can't stand, just raise your hand.
Okay, just one candidate. Okay, great. Okay, sit back down. And those who aren't sure but are leaning a particular way, can you stand? And if you can't stand, raise your hand. Okay, awesome. Okay, you can sit back down. Anyone who doesn't really know and is very much open to being swung in any direction. Just the one guy. Well, no, turn upset. Alright. Okay, is there anything else? Oh yes, the hashtag.
Can you hear me okay? That was the first person speaking. After doing 24 of these hustings, we were all joking with each other, working out actually the hardest question in this entire hustings is what is our names, to be frank. It's come to that point where I might start introducing myself as Lorraine. My name is Ben Helmut. I'm standing to be the Conservative MP in Bath. And the big issue for me in Bath, after speaking to tens of thousands of people across the city, in particular students and young people, is sorting out our transport system here. So we know how cost prohibitive buses are in this city. We know how difficult it is to get from one side of it to the other. We also know how difficult it is, unless you're Bradley Wiggins, to cycle up the hills in Bath as well. So we've produced a transport manifesto. It's on my website, benforbath.co.uk/transport. That hopefully will appear up on there later on. And what you can do is you can look on that and you can see some of the solutions that we're proposing. So one of them is introducing cycle racks on buses. The other is introducing Oyster cards and smart card ticketing on buses, just to help you, get the prices down, but also for you to be able to get around the city a bit better. And lastly, the first political memory I have of getting involved was actually, ironically, campaigning against the Conservative Party. As ironic as that sounds, the Conservatives were at that time running a council where I was living, and they were closing down the special needs school, and I thought that was wrong, and I got involved in the campaign. It was a very apolitical campaign, it was a cross-party campaign, and from there on in I've got very much more interested in education policy, and that's resulted in me now being a school governor at the Bath Studio School in Olddown. So looking forward to answering some of your questions later. Thank you.
Yeah, let's just move across. Right.
Okay. I don't have a microphone, so can everyone hear me? Do these ones work, or should I? I can kind of lean awkwardly like this.
It's fine.
Oh,
It's
okay,
fine.
that's good. Can you give them the catch box? Right, yes, my name is Dominic Tristram, and I am the respected Green Party MP. I'm going to start my earliest political memory, but when I was at primary school, my parents used to bundle up all our old newspapers and take them. The school had the old shed where people put newspapers, and I must have been 6 or 7. And I remember thinking, this is just normal, right? This paper has been made, it gets mashed up and turned into more newspaper. This is just the way things work. And then as I got older, not much older, I realised actually that doesn't work for everything. We'd throw away plastic and metal and all these other things, which just go straight in the bin. And that started me thinking really on this long path to thinking about the environment. And like, why don't we reuse these things? And why are some things obviously reused, like newspaper and bottle banks? And, these aren't unusual, these have been around for a long time. And yet other things like plastic get thrown away. So I started thinking about it a bit more, and that got me involved with things like, eventually, things like NGOs like Greenpeace and Friends of the Earth, campaigning about the environment. But I just realised as time went on, actually, that you can't just campaign with organisations like that, gross as they are, because the political system has to change for actually the world to change. So I thought, well, the way to do that really is to get involved in politics. I didn't join a party for a long time, but I was very active writing to MPs and all the other sort of normal things that people do. So here I am, standing as an MP for Bath, and actually what got me into it ultimately wasn't the environment so much as the NHS, but we might talk about it a bit later. What I want to do for Bath really is to tackle inequality, and that's just the whole country really, but mostly in Bath, we all see it from things like housing, and how you can have a full-time job in Bath, and some of you made it once you finish university, and even with that you can't afford a house because they're so expensive. The wages in Bath are quite low, and the house price is very high, as I'm sure lots of you know. And it affects students as well, because if house prices are high, then student rents are really high. So I'm going to run out of time now, so hopefully we'll have a chance to talk about those issues later on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I didn't say to you guys, but Danny will give the signal for 10 seconds remaining.
I was born in Bath, and in the 1960s my father stood as a Liberal twice for council, sadly unsuccessfully. It was very Labour then in the city. And my earliest memory, a political memory, is when Jeremy Thorpe, many of you are too young to know Jeremy Thorpe, but he was a very well-known Liberal, flew in a helicopter into Royal Victoria Park, and there were all the Liberal supporters there. And so I grew up in this house with my father's beliefs. And that sort of continued through to into the 1970s when I started to get involved. And then as a young mum I got involved in a campaign in Bath for a crossing after children were knocked down. So it really built up very slowly through some of the campaigns I got involved with within the city of Bath, my home city. And then 20 years ago I stood for council. I've been a councillor for 20 years and feel very proud to have been so involved with my community. And then, as you all know, in January I made the decision to go independent. I feel very strongly that we need to have affordable housing in the city. I'm very disappointed about the U-turn on tuition fees. I'm very concerned about fracking. The NHS and social care are vitally important. I worked in the health service for 25 years in Bath, so I have a great understanding of health and social care. So there are so many issues that need to be addressed in the city, but as an independent I can go into Parliament and I can truly put Bath first. I can vote for policies that are right for Bath, but also I can vote against policies that are not right for Bath, and I won't have a party telling me how I should vote. And that's why I made the big step, and I'm very proud to be the independent candidate here in the city of Bath, my home city.
I'm the Labour parliamentary candidate for Bath. I've grown up in Bath, Bath's my home, and I'm very proud of that. Slightly strange to be a comedian. When I've found myself here in the past, it's always been for very different reasons. But first of all, my main objective, if I'm elected, like Dominic, will be tackling inequality. We have 1 in 5 children in Bath living below the poverty line. I think that's unacceptable. In tackling inequality will be put to the right to top of any incoming Labour government's agenda as well. We'll do that through raising the minimum wage, bringing in a lower starting rate of tax, and also generally lowering the cost of living for people in Bath. I was born in 1995, so of course one of my first words was Tony Blair. My first real political memory, though, was watching the protests after the Liberal Democrats unashamedly promised to scrap tuition fees, but said they would also vote against any increase, and obviously they in turn voted to treble them. And I remember watching those protests on the TV, and quite soon after I made the decision to become involved, and I joined the Labour Party. And in the Labour Party I saw a real vehicle for change and an opportunity to build an altogether more equal, more inclusive and a fairer society, and that's something I will certainly work to achieve if I am elected. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you. My name's Steve Bradley. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate, hoping to keep Bath Liberal. I'll go down the order we were given things in. Main achievement in office, which I would like to deliver. One locally, one nationally. Locally, it's transport. We have had in this city for decades a real problem with our transport infrastructure. It hasn't been addressed by successive councils. I'm really proud that since the Liberal Democrats took over the council 4 years ago, we've delivered the city's first ever transport strategy in 50 years, and we've got all the other parties to sign up to our plan as well. So the job of the next MP is to go to Westminster and get the funding to deliver that. Nationally, I'm determined to be a strong voice for the environment in Westminster. I'm a lifelong environmentalist. I think we need people in all parties who are serious about climate change. I'd actually like to have a cross-party organisation of MPs who are determined to work together and ignore party politics in order to push environmental activism up the agenda of all parties. My first memory of being political is really tricky. I grew up in Northern Ireland throughout the Troubles, so literally everything in that society was political to some extent. I have my own recycling story from 1984, when nobody recycled, when I used to get a group of friends and we'd collect cans at the end of our home football club's games, but I didn't consider recycling political. I guess the first big, well, I first got involved in politics because of the Iraq War in 2003 when Labour started the illegal war there. That's when I decided I wanted to get into politics to stop things like that happening again. But prior to that, I spent 2 years as Bath University Student Union President, where I campaigned on all sorts of things, perhaps ironically, against Labour's plan to scrap free education and bring in tuition fees, a promise that they themselves broke, and onto other issues such as human rights campaigns against the likes of Nestle and Lloyd Bank. So a long record of campaigning on student issues in Bath as well as environmental issues. Thank you.
Concentrating very heavily on is working with other MPs, be it UKIP or otherwise, to try and get our economy reinvigorated. I think that in many ways there's been a lot of people have lost the opportunities, the economic opportunities that once existed. Economic policy is something that's quite dear to my heart, and it's something that I'll be working very hard. You know, I want to see good economic opportunity for everybody, from every walk of life. Now, one of my very early memories of politics was staying up till about 6 o'clock in the morning to watch the 1997 general election. It was the first election that I'd voted in. I was 19 years old at the time. All my life up until that point, it had been a Tory government, and like many people in this country, I was very, very keen to see them go. I remember sort of turning on the television the following morning. It was a bright, sunny May day, and seeing the new Labour cabinet dancing very badly to the sound of Things Can Only Get Better by Dee Ream. A fantastic, fantastic tune. And they felt, like many people, that there was a real sense of optimism that things were going to get better. But sadly, 13 years later, I was sat back in the same room, in front of the same television, in my parents' house, hoping to see Labour booted out. And it taught me to remain very cynical about the words of politicians and not look to them for the answers to every problem. And I'm here today because, like many people, I'm sick and tired of the lies and broken promises that our political class give to us. I intend to inject some honesty and integrity back into politics. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on. Thanks very much for that, candidates. As long as it's clean, I'm fine with that. I wish that was intentional, it really wasn't.
Turn into a party political squabbling match on Twitter.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the questions now that we're submitted by students. So the first one is from Will Pettifer, I believe.
Given the massive debt students are now facing upon graduation and increasing housing and living costs, what would the candidates do, if elected, to help improve the financial situation for students in Bath?
Okay, thanks, Will.
Reducing tuition fees to £6,000 per year. It's a promise that's realistic, it's deliverable, and it will be immediate, benefiting both future and current students as well. Long term, of course, I would like to see free education. That's a view shared by many in the Labour Party. We're also committed to increasing grants as well, which will help a lot of students, particularly from more disadvantaged backgrounds. Something I would like to see is bring down the cost of living, in particular the cost of housing. As a party, we're committed to banning rip-off letting fees. These are the fees that agents often charge students or anyone else when you're starting a tenancy. And we're also going to implement a cap on rent increases as well. And we're also committed to raising the minimum wage to £8 an hour. This is something that will benefit a lot of students who are also working alongside their degree.
Thanks, Ollie. Student debts held by the government, because really, let's not mess around. You shouldn't pay for education. Education should be free. It's outrageous that we're being asked to pay by the people who've got free education mostly. So yeah, let's write them off. And of course it's affordable. We're the 6th richest country in the world, and we're going to reinstate student grants. We're also going to look at basically scrapping the fees for postgraduate qualifications, not immediately, because that would actually take a bit more money. But we think you really should be able to educate yourself to any level if you have the will and the intelligence to do so. Housing is a good point, yeah, and we've been talking about rent controls for a long time before Labour did, and we're going to link them to RPI basically, so you won't get these outrageous increases. And finally, we're going to make sure all landlords are licensed, so your housing won't be down the model.
I think one of the issues surrounding this is the cost of accommodation has become very, very expensive, especially in Bath. I don't think Bath students get any larger sort of maintenance loans than they do anywhere else in the country, but property here is an awful lot more expensive than it is everywhere else. It's part of the problem with property is it is a supply and demand problem. You know, we need to build more and more properties. Bath has got a lot of disused sites. They were disused when I was a small boy, and they're still disused now. We've got some quite interesting policies surrounding creating real economic incentives that are actually get people building. And I speak to property developers in Bath, and they tell me why they're not building on these sites. And you know, it's quite interesting to hear some of the reasons. And in many cases, it's planning. The council are not keen on helping them do it. In many cases, it's just economic reasons. So we're going to offer tax breaks and all sorts of things. On the subject of tuition fees, we would just very quickly, we would scrap the tuition. We'd love to scrap all tuition fees. We'll scrap all the STEM subjects.
He's on a European time.
Idealism versus realism, and the realism unfortunately is that we aren't able to pluck money off trees these days. So on our side, from the Conservative side, we're not going to be reducing tuition fees down below £9,000. And I say this as someone whose only breadwinner in the household was my father, because my mother's disabled. So he had to, when I went to university, upfront the fees, which, to be honest with you, meant he had to remortgage his house. So actually, if it was under the new system, my family situation would have been better off under the new system than the old system, just based on my personal circumstances. But this 6,000, 9,000 fee seems to distract away from the bigger issue, really, which is about the reform to the grants and maintenance system. And that hasn't been changed in a long period of time. And also, we need to be working incredibly hard to make sure that the cost of living situation in the city is sorted. And things like Lidl being introduced actually will help students be able to access cheaper shopping in Bath too.
Okay.
Housing in Bath fundamentally is so expensive because there's just a shortage of supply. So nationally, the Liberal Democrats want to build 300,000 housing units every single year, especially using derelict public land. I'm afraid Julian's wrong. All the derelict sites in Bath either are being built on, have planning permission to be built on, or currently have applications in with the council, and there are 7,500 homes being built in Bath on those. We also brought in licensing to ensure better quality student housing here, and I want to work with both student unions at the universities to see if we can have a profit-free student letting company set up in order to provide a better service directly to students. Secondly, on transport, Liberal Democrats want to bring in a 2/3 discount bus pass for everybody on the age of 21. I've got a long record of campaigning on buses in Bath. It's something I did when I was president of Bath University Students' Union. And finally, on cost of living, a very important point here. The Liberal Democrats are the only party in the council who don't believe students should pay council tax. It was proposed 6 months ago by an independent councillor in the ward with the most students, and it was supported by Tories and Labour. So if you vote Conservative Labour, you will get a council tax bill for £250 a year.
6 grown-up children, 2 went to university, 2 went to City of Bath College, and 2 went into apprenticeships, and everyone has that right. I've never agreed with the increase in tuition fees. That's one area that I'm really, really disappointed with, and also with Labour actually bringing it in initially. So we've been let down by not only the coalition government, but our previous government as well. Everyone talks about affordable housing. It is vital that we have affordable housing in the city, not only for our young people who were born here, but for our graduates. We want to encourage you to stay in the city. We want your skills to be brought into our businesses. So affordable housing is really, really vital. And recently, I supported a local housing association campaign, and it was they want to petition the next government, and this is a document, to end the housing crisis within the next generation. So all the housing associations across the country are all saying we need more housing and we need more affordable housing. So that's vital for the vibrancy of the city and for you young people. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So that's...
Run Council has worked to raise the standard of student housing in Bath. Well, 87% of HMOs, multiple occupancy housing, many of which are occupied by students, are below standard in Bath. That's under the Liberal Democrats' watch, and I think that's disgraceful. Also, Steve made a point about council tax. There was a motion put forward by an independent councillor calling for students to pay council tax. That was supported originally by the Liberal Democrats.
Absolutely not true.
Thanks to our councillors on the council, that motion was changed to ensure that actually what it would be asking for was the council getting a refund from central government on the money lost as a result of students not paying council tax. Unequivocally, the Labour Party in Bath never would have supported students paying anything towards council tax. It was a desperate, cynical attempt by the Liberal Democrats to try and claw back some of those student votes that they rightfully lost as a result of betraying millions of students.
Paper, hang on.
Yeah, get some more. Yeah, the thing with the bus fares, that sounds like an awfully good idea. My question would be, we've had a Liberal Democrat MP for, over 20 years. We've had a Liberal Democrat run council for quite a few years, on and off. We've currently had one, we've got one at the moment. Why haven't you done this already? There's lots of good ideas coming out from the Liberal Democrats, but they've been running this city for God knows how long. And it's interesting how they all come out a few days before an election, isn't it?
We have no idea why. We have no idea why.
Thanks, Bruce. A couple of points. Apologies. It's getting very party political. I saw a tweet that somebody didn't want that to happen, but that's the direction that's been taken down. Firstly, we need to be honest on tuition fees. No party has clean hands on this issue. Ollie may not remember, Labour have broken 4 promises.
Well, no accolades, please.
Labour have broken 4 promises on tuition fees over the years, including a promise they wouldn't get rid of free education, which is scrapped very soon here now. Apparently Labour people quite like it, they scrapped it in the first place. And Labour themselves trebled tuition fees in 2004, despite a 2001 manifesto promise that they wouldn't do it. So no party has clean hands on this. The only party who opposed it, and we did so clearly on the basis that students are not economically active, and therefore it's unfair to actually...
Untrue!
A lie! You can look at the minutes, it's actually reported on
different time.
I'd like to say one thing very quickly. They have free education in Germany, free education in Norway, free education in most European countries. To think that we pay £9,000 a year is pretty shit, to be honest.
You have every right to free education, because at the end of the day you will be contributing to the economy as well, because you'll be earning and you'll be shopping and you'll be helping your cities and towns wherever you live. So you have every right to free education.
The reason you don't have free education is because this government doesn't work for you, it works for the rich and the corporations.
Would you like to come in as well?
Only say I disagree with what Dominic said.
Alright, we're going to move on to the second question. So I believe this is Simon Gilly for this one. Simon.
For what reasons should a young person turn out to vote when, especially in reference to our Bath MP Don Foster, many promises given by the politician will be broken? Why shouldn't the young person just go about creating real change in the community without wasting time in thinking that a politician might be able to bring about the change for them?
Okay, we'll go.
Definitely vote. So the way to get politicians to do what you want and to work for you is to vote. It's that simple. How can we do this? Well, just look at how many people are, I think it's 8,000 people off the register this time because of the way they changed the registration system. Most of those are for young people, because there are some stumbling blocks in your way, like national insurance and other stuff. It's all to stop the young people registering, it's all to stop young people voting, and that's what they are doing, don't get me wrong. So, register to vote, harangue politicians. If you don't see a politician you like, stand yourself. That's what I did. I thought, I can't vote for any of these guys, they don't speak for me. You've got to do something about it, and you're right, direct action and sort of working in the community is not much is going to change.
Ben, would you like to go?
What happened before the previous election didn't just impact negatively our result, and it's something that we need to redouble our efforts on. What happened in Scotland was incredibly exciting, with the 84% turnout of 16 to 18-year-olds at the referendum. We need to take that on board and encourage more young people to get involved in the political decision-making process. I mean, it was interesting in political history when I was going to university, and in 1950 you ended up with something like 84% of turnout amongst 18 to 25-year-olds, because Churchill was promising new houses for all those troops that came off from the war, and lots of people got involved in politics that way. Politicians have got to be looking at ways of engaging with young people in different ways on the issues that matter to them, and I will continue to do that if I become the MP here.
Thank you, Ben. I'll go to Oliver.
About a large number of political issues and seeing political parties and politicians as a viable vehicle for change. So we've got a lot to do to try and re-establish that connection. The overwhelming issue when people talk about politics and disillusionment often is trust. We have massive issues with trust. That's why Ed Miliband has said he wants to be the first Prime Minister in history to under-promise and over-deliver. I think that's absolutely vital. I think we're going to see more of that from our politicians. I think what's also important to recognise, though, is that politics, political parties are the only real vehicle for change we have. History alone tells us that. All the achievements that now too often perhaps we take for granted, the minimum wage, the right to vote in the first place, rights for workers are being achieved through politics. So get out there and make your voices heard and hold politicians to account.
And whilst many students across the UK are disillusioned with the U-turn that was made with tuition fees, it's still important to have your say. As your independent Member of Parliament for Bath, I would meet regularly with local groups over the 5 years. I'd also engage with you through social media and various other ways. I think it's vital that you have a listening MP who can then go and vote for policies that are right for you. And I think some of our career MPs across the country, our career politicians, are so busy sort of towing their party line that they lose sight of what's important in the cities and towns that they represent. So I feel very passionately and very strongly that your voice does need to be heard. Your vote does count for whoever you vote for. You have your say.
Jim, would you like to come in next?
Yeah, well, I think it's, John Foster is not unique when it comes to politicians, and where politics probably won't ever be the same as it has been. The political class seem to like to tell you how to vote in many cases. They'll stand here and say, you must vote for this, or this will happen, or you'll get this. I think there's a lot of good things happening. There's an organisation called Democratic Accountability who film all of these events, and they're going to put them all on the internet. So developments like that will start to call MPs to account. Heaven help us if we elect the Tory or the Lib Dem, when they go to Parliament, and forget all about Bath, you'll be able to see what they said on the internet. So my advice would be stop voting for parties that lie to you over and over again. Vote for someone who tells the truth.
What about recall?
Well, yeah, MP recall. Let's bring that in. The Tories failed to do that. They promised it in 2010. Our manifesto, we're very keen on proper MP recall.
Like
Sack
I
your
said,
MP.
Sorts of varieties which will have in the future and have currently does. In an election, a party says in its manifesto what it would do if it had everything its own way. But in a coalition, you don't get everything your own way. That's the reality. I'm really proud the Liberal Democrats have delivered 80% of our manifesto with only 8% of the MPs. I wish we got the other 20% through, most notably tuition fees, but we were blocked from doing so by the Conservatives. In terms of why to vote, politics is about balancing competing priorities, and whoever shouts the loudest, frankly, gets heard. So if young people don't vote, you won't have a voice and you will not get heard. As mentioned, politicians are terrified of the grey vote. 85% of elderly people vote. That's why things like pensions and issues that matter to them always get due attention. In terms of affecting change, there's one bit of the question that nobody's answered yet. Politics isn't the only way to change things, but it is nonetheless an important way for one solid reason. Politics involves one of the most important things you need to drive change, and that's funding. So if you don't engage in politics, that money will be spent instead on other people's priorities.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 My name's Graham Page. Addressed directly to Steve Bradley. You mentioned 7,500 new houses are being built in Bath. I look round and see these houses. They're all nice, prestigious blocks of houses. How many percentage of that housing is built for low-income families?
Firstly, you'll have looked around west, the biggest MLE site in Coombe Down. Planning permission for 710 houses in total, of which 240 will be social, not affordable, but even cheaper. 60% of market value will be social. So we're building on all derelict land in Bath. I define it to tell me a derelict site in Bath which isn't already got planning permission, being built, or with an application that's currently in, with the exception of Bath Press, but that's because we have to wait to see off Tesco building a mega store there. We are building for the first time in Bath the houses we've needed for a long time. And don't take my word for it, look at the skyline of Bath when you leave here today. You will see 6 or 7 cranes, something that you never saw above Bath for decades. We're finally getting things done, building things, fixing things in the city, and I'm really proud in particular, we're delivering 7,500 new homes in a city which only has 40,000 new homes, and I'm absolutely confident that will help drive down the cost of renting and the cost of buying.
In the river and trying to buy somewhere over in Western Riverside. I'll give you the exact percentage of the number of affordable homes that are currently sitting on Western Riverside. It's 10% of those homes which are affordable. The lowest at the moment, the lowest price at the moment that's available is £300,000 for a 2-bedroom flat. Now for me, I do not believe that is affordable. Myself and my partner, we quite a bit of money at the moment, I'm not going to lie, and I still can't afford it. Okay, so what on earth are we supposed to be telling people who don't actually have an ability to save up their own deposit? Are we supposed to be turning around and saying, yes, everything's absolutely hunky-dory, we'll carry on going the same way that it's been going for the last 25 years, or are we going to turn around and say, no, we're going to have a change in Bath, and we're actually going to fight for the funding from central government to deliver more affordable homes? It's certainly something that I'll be campaigning for.
You neglected to mention those homes got planning permission when the Conservatives ran the council up until 2011.
You've run the council for 4 years, so you could change that.
Western Riverside properties had planning permission before 2011. The ones that have been built already then.
And you can change that.
In the interest of time, in the interest of time, we're going to move on to the next question. Beautiful.
Okay, sorry, please excuse my cold. What is the elephant in the room and what should we do about it?
So just to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, what is the elephant in the room and what should we do?
I certainly, from my perspective, feel the elephant in the room is the Tory Lib Dem lies regarding Labour's economic record. I'm proud of a lot of things we did in government. We rebuilt our NHS, we took 1 million kids out of poverty, and we brought in the minimum wage as well. But I'm also particularly proud of our economic record. The Lib Dems and the Tories talk about inheriting a broken economy. What they actually inherited was a growing economy. When they came to power, the economy was recovering. They took us back into recession and lost our successive growth, the lowest level of unemployment in history, and the average deficit under Labour was just 1.2%. And I ask everyone to just think about the absurdity of the claim that the Tories and Lib Dems make. The fact that us building schools in Bath, investing in our NHS in Bath, caused the financial crisis that is still affecting half the world.
Everything that they promised, because there just will not be the money in the budget for them to be able to deliver for the whole of the United Kingdom. Also, we must remember that it's not just the coalition government that have got us into a mess. It was also the previous government, as I've mentioned recently, the Labour government were in 2008 when we had the terrible credit crunch. So it's been going on. No, it's been going on. It's my turn to speak. You've spoken, Ollie. It's all the governments. They make these promises. All the parties make these promises, and they don't deliver. Now we want to know what is an issue that's not being addressed, and they keep talking about the NHS and how they're going to put billions into the NHS, but none of them mention social care. Have bed blocking because people have to pay for their social care. So it needs to be not in isolation funding for the NHS, but there has to be money put into social care as well.
Okay, I'll go to Julian.
Saying about Labour's economic record. I remember in 1997, while listening to things could only get better, you could buy a house in Bath for £50,000. And the cost of that now, in fact my wife and I bought our first house together very recently actually. The only reason that we could buy it is because of having two incomes. I echo some of the things that Lorraine says. The mainstream political class, you should have to think about what they've done to you. The cost of housing, the cost of buying a house, wage compression, high taxes, university tuition fees, the amount of debt that you'll all face, unsecured debt. You should really consider some of that. And it astonishes me that throughout all of this, I still come across people who are angry at UKIP for all of these things, which astonishes me.
Okay, I'll go to Tom next.
Nerdy thing to care about. But the fact is that the major parties all get huge amounts of money from corporations and very rich people, a lot of whom don't actually pay tax in this country, but have a very vested interest in things working their way. So let's face it, as long as that's true, that these parties aren't going to be representing you, they're going to be representing the people who pay them. So that's why we say there should be state funding of political parties. Now, nobody likes to think that their tax money will go to a political party, but let me tell you this, the only way that the party is going to represent you is to get an allocation of money from the state per member they have, and then the popular parties that have lots of members will have more money than the less popular parties. That's true, but there's more incentive for the parties to get members, and to get members you have to be popular, you have to appeal to people. So that's what's going to fix things. Ban donations, ban sort of these corporate payoffs of parties, and we'll see things like the NHS being given to Tory donors stuff like that.
It's quite nice to be able to answer this on a little bit more of a political basis, but the elephant in the room reality is the economy. We cannot deliver anything in terms of increased NHS spend, into building more schools, into building more affordable homes, into spending more money on our defence, etc., without a strong, stable, growing economy. I'm sure there's no surprises in the room to know that I'm probably going to be talking about this, but from pure personal experience, I know what it was like to leave university with substantial amounts of debt, going into my first job in 2008, just when Lehman's went bust. And I was stuck on minimum wage for 18 months of my life, and it was the most soul-destroying period of my life. I don't want to see this country go back 7 years. I want to see us continue on the same trajectory and continued economic growth so we can pay for some of these reforms that we really want to see achieved.
Linked issues, drugs and mental health.
The so-called war on drugs, quite simply, isn't working. It's cost over £1 trillion globally, changed nothing, led to a huge body count, over 100,000 people killed in Mexico. We need a more grown-up approach to drugs. We favour a Portuguese-style approach. We want to take the issue of drugs out of the criminal justice system, out of the Home Office, into the Department of Health and the civil justice system. We will not criminalise people who have a small amount for personal use. We want to focus instead on treatment for heavy users, education for a small amount of users, and leave valuable resources free to go after the Mr. Bigs who are making the real money in this. And finally, on mental health, 1 in 4 people in the UK will experience a mental health problem every year. Up until recently, it's been the Cinderella service of the health service. I'm proud that the Liberal Democrats in government have changed that.
Okay, so we'll have the right to reply for this. And we'll go straight to Ollie, I believe you wanted something.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to make 2 really brief points. First of all, Lorraine again mentioned Labour and the credit crunch. Well, I mean, the Tories endorsed our spending plans only months before the general election. They've actually borrowed more in 5 years than we borrowed 13 years of government. I mean, I'd like to know how anyone could explain how a single political party is responsible for a financial crisis that was caused on the other side of the Atlantic through subprime mortgages. Also, Dominic, we're the biggest mass membership party in the country. The vast majority of our funding comes from our members. The other part comes from working people through the trade union movement.
Resources. How do you feel we should broach this? I'll go to Steve first.
Sorry. I'm personally, I'm a lifelong environmentalist. I am a self-employed consultant on environmental sustainability. I passionately believe the biggest threat humanity faces isn't terrorism, immigration, or the economy, it's climate change. And I want to be an MP who will go and do something about that. The Lib Dems have a strong record on the environment. In 1979, we were pilloried by the right-wing press because we passed a piece of policy which doesn't reduce the ability of future generations to do likewise themselves. So we can't keep, under the current economic model, having economic growth as we know it. The Liberal Democrats have a solution on this. We have a policy called 5 Green Laws, which we will introduce in the first 2 years of any government to permanently green Britain. One of those is a Zero Waste Act. We want to create a circular economy. At the moment we manufacture, use, throw away and build new. Instead we want to reuse items to have a circular...
An awful lot of investment in renewable energy production. Home insulation projects that are being delivered at the university are second to none around the rest of the UK, and they're leading the way in that area. And actually you'll find that economic growth in those areas are actually at the moment outstripping some of the fossil fuel technology productions that are being created. So in all honesty with you, no is the answer. It isn't sustainable in the lifetime that I'm going to be leading, hopefully. But in the next sort of 30, 40 years, Bath can really benefit from taking on board the renewable energies revolution and really building jobs and growth in that area.